So with that, I think we have some time for some questions if y'all have any for us.
There is a question that came up a little bit earlier that was directed to Greg, and it says, do you know if the UCSD insurance covers counseling? I can say that our main counseling and psychological services office, that as a current student, you would be able to get resources there. But for Greg particularly, I think you talked about perhaps a psychologist that works specifically with the LGBT center. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about that relationship specifically.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, actually, so hold on, let me pull it up so I don't spread misinformation. So if you, we have a counselor that basically is a part of our, as our, what was the word? Community psychologist. So like the, someone who specializes in the community and is like there for that resource specifically. But CAPS itself has a lot of different resources as well. And you can always get referrals. You can always call them and schedule things. And they're a really great hub for figuring out how to take the next steps. And personally, it's been really helpful and really easy. But yeah, CAPS is usually a good place to start, or you can always email our center and figure it out. So it's just yeah. So I don't know if I really answered the question, but yeah, thank you.
The other thing is that most of our centers have a direct relationship or a liaison, either to a counselor at CAPS or to community groups that help support our different kinds of needs specifically around counseling and psychological services. So if you're looking for something, and sometimes, you know, like folks will come to me and say, look, I don't want to use the campus services, but I need help finding some community services because that'll probably be more long-term for me. You know, do you have recommendations of where I can look and things like that? So there is that. Many of those counselors will do something in our spaces or in conjunction with our offices, whether that's some kind of type of drop-in or group or some other kind of service that means that you can come in and see someone. And, you know, if there is a specific need, then sometimes we can help connect you to a counselor that specializes in working with a specific community or has more experience with that, or themselves maybe identify, depending on how you identify and what it is that you're looking for in that counselor. So if those are something that you're looking for, particularly with our staff on campus, you know, come connect with one of our staff and get to know us, because we might be able to help connect you more specifically. And I think a lot of, you know, CAPS is hiring a lot more folks, so we're excited to get to meet some of the new staff and to see what kinds of diversity they're going to add to the CAPS staff. So if you're on the CAPS staff and you see that there's folks there and it looks a little small, it is, and they're in the process of hiring, and as they get more folks on board, then that will change their staff.
And just generally, just to follow up on that too, I mean, I come from I'm from Hawaii, and we don't really have a lot of like resources compared to like the San Diego area. And just like, you know, looking for community specific psychological services, both on campus and in the community, is a lot easier than a lot of other places. So I really, you know, reach out to CAPS and reach out to the community centers, because I was, you know, when I started here, I was able to find a psychological services that specialized in LGBTQ folks in the LGBTQ community. So that was really helpful. But yeah, definitely like pressing for that and trying to like find, using the resources that were brought up today to try and find the best solution for you. So.
Thank you for sharing. There is a question about getting email addresses for the group. So I would say in general, if you check with our, oh, great, here we go.
Figured I'd advance the slide just to make sure folks, and I think this one should be at the LGBT Center, but yeah, these are our general emails, and if you reach out through those emails, you will be able to get connected. They're checked, frequently, and you can be put in touch with the right person. If there's someone specifically, you could check out our website, and all of our staff email is on our website, which for most of us, I think is pretty much similar to our email, but just .ucsd.edu. So.
And I'm also going to put here in the chat that for general graduate student queries, if you're looking to get connected to a campus resource, or you're just not quite sure who to ask, you can always contact gradlife@ucsd.edu. So with the graduate division, we have various staff members, but we also have a graduate intern, our Grad Life intern, that manages the Grad Life website and Grad Life email. And so you can send questions there, and one of us will answer. And the interns in particular have really insightful advice, being current graduate students themselves. Okay, so there is a question here that I'm just going to sort of pose broadly to the group if anyone has some insight here. But this is asking about food resources that are available for grads who move to campus. I'm not sure if there's,
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So my previous job was working for housing, so perhaps that will help at least a little bit in trying to provide some context. If you are moving to any of the graduate on-campus connected communities, they don't have dining halls as you might find in some of the undergraduate side. They are all apartments for the most part, and they have kitchens. And so what has typically happened is that most of the graduate student community has not necessarily been interested in some of the undergraduate kind of dining plans. So if you are, there are some ways to sign up for a community plan. You can find that information on their website. There are a couple of other types of things. There had been some shuttling, again, when folks are on campus and buses are a little safer to do, that we're taking folks into different parts of the immediate area to get to a couple of particularly Asian markets. So there's a Korean grocery store and a general, like relatively Chinese but general Asian market that the shuttle stopped at for folks on the weekends to be able to get some things that were a lot easier to access than the city bus. And so the city bus is something that is included in the fees that graduate students pay in order to get to some of the other grocery stores and things like that. If you're concerned about food insecurity and things like that, there is an office on campus called the Hub, and they will help you apply for some assistance and be able to use that at some of the local grocery stores. There's also a food pantry that they work with where folks can come in and take a few things that they might need that can help them kind of make sure that they're going to be able to afford to eat and be healthy while they're your students. So those are a couple of the things that I think that connects with. If I didn't answer that fully or in the way that you were hoping, you might want to retype the question. And if other folks have anything to add, you should go ahead and do that too.
Also put a link in the Q&A to it's basicneeds.ucsd.edu. And that website has information on the Hub, and it also has information on CalFresh if you need to apply for CalFresh. Because I know right now over the last, since April, CalFresh has been providing single people with the full allotted benefits. So that's $194 a month if you meet the eligibility requirement. So $194 can go a long way.
I would like to add, and I may have to double check the timing of this, but the hub is either planning to soon or has opened like a satellite
It's open.
location. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. To open a second location that can provide services within graduate housing. So if you will be moving into graduate housing, that that office is open and available to students currently.
It is in the largest communities. So if you move to Coast, it is not close to Coast. And the one on Central Campus is closer to Coast. But if you're living in the other graduate communities, those are all relatively closer to each other. It's a large area, and that satellite is in that community.
Thank you so much. So there's also a question here. Are cultural events like Diwali, Holi, etc. celebrated on campus? And I apologize if I mispronounced either of those.
So specifically, events like Diwali and Holi have been planned more by student organizations, and they do that on their own. I guess relatively specifically with my office, since it's so many folks, I'm one person and we're newer. All of the student organizations have a longer history of planning and doing those activities for the broader community. And so in supporting them continuing to do those things on their own and in the ways that mean that they continue to have full control over those programs, I let them do that. But specifically, those types of events are tend to include our South Asian diaspora communities, and they've been planning those for decades. I was a student a couple decades ago, and that same student organization was planning those activities then. So they're continuing to do that. They vary in size depending on the organization. And if you're interested in getting involved with planning those, there's a couple of different organizations. Sangam does some of that, and there is an Indian Graduate Student Association that also sometimes partners with them and sometimes holds their own specific events around those types of cultural holidays.
Thank you so much. So there's another question that's come in, which this is a really great one. Since on-campus centers are not currently open, we're not exactly sure when they will be open. Aside from signing up for the listservs, are there interactive online communities in their place? Discord servers or Facebook groups were offered as some examples.
So many of our centers and programs have active Facebook pages. I think all of us also have Instagram accounts. Some folks are also using Twitter and posting things on Tumblr and other places. So you should be able to find that information that way. The newsletters will tell you about online events, and what we're hoping is that we'll also provide some spaces for folks to come and do some types of engagement. For my office last quarter, because we were also online for spring quarter, that included holding some regular community time, so just space for folks to be able to come in and gather. Sometimes that was studying, sometimes we were drawing pictures and making zines and other kinds of things during that. We had some different kinds of things that were specific to community. We had some partnerships with our CAPS counselors to do some open types of hours that were relatively drop-in and things like that. The Cross Cultural Center did webinars. The Black Resource Center had a space weekly that they called the Family Room, which would be like if you just walked into their space and wanted to kind of come in and say hi. So there are all of these different kinds of things that we're planning, and so some of them will be much more facilitated and intentional. There are different kinds of things that happen in some of the online spaces, and if there's something more specific that you want to see, I think that it's okay to reach out to any of the staff to talk through some of the ideas if you want to be involved in helping to plan those things even better. And if not, we can take the idea and see what type of energy the staff has in getting those things together and providing that for you. But we are hoping that there are ways that we can engage with you online and that you already have some familiarity with some of us, so that when we are back on campus, that it doesn't feel too bad to just kind of walk in and like you already know us, because hopefully you will.
And that's another thing too. This is a really great question, and I really appreciate that because as someone who's been desperately trying to like do this in my own like graduate student like chaos of like trying to like write my exams, do this, do that. How do you build community, and how do you stay in touch with other people and not sit at your desk all day and type away and read 3 books? Anyway, I think that this is something really good to reach out to the community centers about, definitely, especially with like the community, the grad interns, because this is something that we're generally charged with doing. So this will be an exciting and interesting project to start doing this. And I really appreciate this question because it's actually, I feel like this might be a good idea to start with as well. So I think that as the quarter goes on, be on the lookout for that kind of stuff from the centers as well. But yeah, thank you for this question.
Yeah, I just want to briefly build off of what Greg and Wendy said. Similarly, we had during the spring, we all had to kind of like figure out what we were doing online, but we had quite a number of live programs. We had, we have a weekly conversation that's led by our undergrad interns, but we have lots of grad students actually coming through called Gender Buffet. And it's weekly on Fridays during the academic year. And we had conversations around lots of different topics. Anti-Blackness, for example, was one of the conversations we had, and kind of really thinking about like the links between gender and anti-Blackness. And we also had other live programs such as our Black Women's Collective that is a partnership with CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, and our liaison, Kat Thompson, who works with some of our centers. She facilitates that program with one of our staff at the Women's Center. And yeah, I think like Greg said, I think a lot of our live programs, is kind of hit or miss. I think people are sometimes zoomed out. So like sometimes we've had them and we didn't necessarily have good turnout. Other things had great turnout. So I think we're really excited to work with you all and see like, what is it that you all want, and to be able to work with our grad interns in particular to build the kind of community that you're looking for virtually. I mean, we've talked about different things at the Women's Center, like we've talked about trying to do specific interest type things. So we talked about doing like a feminist film club where we like have folks watch a film and then they can come together and hang out and talk about it. So we're experimenting and really open to suggestions and working with our staff and our interns to make those suggestions a reality. So yeah, thanks for the question.
At ICRC, we've shifted everything online because of the fact that we're so small physically, and we don't know when we'll be back to campus. So when we got the notice that we were going to close and shift everything over, we moved everything to virtual, and we're actually planning at least until winter quarters to where everything is online. And when you visit our website, there's a tab at the top that says virtual programming. So all of our programming is virtual. And we even post recipes. So you can look at our virtual recipes. You can go to the link that Greg posted, get your food, and then come cook one of our recipes.
Thank you all. Do we have any other questions that have have come from our attendees? Anything that you would like to ask our panelists? Greg and Kelly, do you have any advice or suggestions for new incoming graduate students that you would like to share? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I don't know, Kelly, do you have anything?
I was gonna let you go first. Greg and I know each other. We took a class together. So I'm gonna let you go first because I talked a lot in class.
Oh my God. But no, I mean, you know, like these community centers like are really important and do a lot of work. And personally, I'll say that, you know, having multiple identities, right? So being queer, being Asian American, being Indigenous, being Pacific Islander, all these different things and all these different centers have different kinds of communities, but they've all been really important in my own development. So don't be afraid to just, you know, be who you are and just come. And I don't know, this is like the hard thing in grad school, I guess, is like, you come in and you think, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna write this great thing and all those other things, I'm gonna do this experiment. But then it's also like, make friends, like, you know, meeting people like Kelly and other Indigenous Native grads, and as well as LGBTQIA+ grads has been really helpful and important in my own stuff. So definitely use these resources and don't be afraid. It's here for you as well. It's not just for undergrads. So yeah.
Yeah, my advice would be to enjoy the ride. I think we all come in with expectations of what the experience is going to be like. And I think just in life in general, I've learned that nothing goes according to plan. So have your post-it with your notes, but don't expect it to go perfectly. But enjoy that journey, because I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And the journey that you're on and the paths that take you in a different direction are what are really gonna help you to value the experience. Because I think when we really think about it, one of the things we all have in common is that we're part of a very select group of people who are fortunate enough to be able to come to graduate school. But with that comes the responsibility that no matter where you come from or who you are the future of your community. And just know that things might be hard, but you're doing it to make a better place for the community. And really step outside of your comfort zone. Because I'm really shy and introverted. I'm fortunate that my sister is faculty on campus, so I have a friend on campus. But I've been able to make friends outside of that. And I would say the other thing is, don't compare your journey to anyone else's. Don't be competitive. Don't just, how Greg said, be true to who you are, because your journey is unique. And other people might seem, don't believe the imposter syndrome. Know that you are, like I said, we're part of the select group, but you're also some of the top people in the country who applied to the school and got in, and have faith that you are enough. Don't ever doubt yourself for like 5 minutes and then remind yourself that you're awesome, you got in, and it's an opportunity of a lifetime, and you deserve to enjoy it. It's amazing.
Can I add a piece of advice really quick? I know that I'm not a graduate student here, but there's a lot of helpful people on campus, and we want to help. And the thing is that a lot of us are trying to figure out the ways to reach out to do some of those things, and we can't necessarily read your mind that you need a thing unless you just feel like it's okay for you to come in. And I think specifically for a lot of the graduate students, our offices are not necessarily just for the undergraduate students. So we want you to be able to come by and to participate, and maybe even participate with them. A lot of the things that we're talking about too are things that all of us are dealing with, no matter what level of education that we are at or how old we are and things like that. So I think that that is an important thing to be able to know, that as good as you are to come in, we don't expect that you are doing this by yourself, that all of us exist because this is part of the infrastructure that we believe is needed for you to be successful here. And so we hope that you use all those things because that's what they're intended for.
Thank you. And there is a question that's come up that I would like to make sure that we address. So the question is, how open are the resource centers to accepting folks who may have multiple identities and so do not exactly look as expected or have the same experiences? I imagine this is something that does come up in your work, and if you would like to provide some input, we would appreciate it.
I can start. I answer that question a lot. So with a community that is as diverse and in a US context also includes a lot of multiracial and multi-ethnic people, there's no look. People expect that if I say my title, that I am expecting somebody to look like me. And I know that, but I don't expect that for the people who are using the service. I think the other thing is that all of our centers are a service of the campus, and so are open. We are going to center the experience of a particular group of students, and there are a couple places where we ask very specifically that folks are really respectful that a certain space might be for that particular population to be able to gather and meet. And most of the programs are going to be open. I often tell students that I'm not checking at the door. I have no way to do that anyway. And so if you're telling me that you belong in our space and you're respectful to everybody else in it, I have no reason to wonder why you're there. So yeah, so again, especially I think in communities that I'm working with, people have said to me, I'm not exactly what you would expect somebody to look like who identifies in this way, and there's no look. That's not really a thing.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna add. So I thank you. I know someone asked a question so that I kind of answered it, but just to build off what Wendy said and what others have said too, is that, if we really think about what, like the various intersections of our identities, right? Nobody is just one category. Like these are tools to like organize ourselves and to like think about how we relate to each other, but aren't necessarily like, oh, I am just this, and as someone as a multiracial grad student at UCSD, who is also queer, who also identifies as various different things, I mean, going, I remember on the first week of school, Burgundy, who is our VP, Vice President of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion now, who's in our department, they dragged me to the ICRC to, hang out and talk about being Native and indigeneity and stuff like that. But, I remember like my second quarter, I like cold emailed Wendy and I was like, hi, you're the person in charge of the Pacific Islanders, right? As someone who is Native Hawaiian, right? We fit in all these different categories that don't necessarily say who we are. But, and also going to the LGBT Research Center and going to the QGSA mixers, there's all these different spaces that have different purposes and different focuses, like Wendy said. But I think that, it's about being true to who you are, and that who you are isn't just like one thing. And, as a part of just going through grad school and just trying to like get through it, it's realizing that, you have to honor who that is, and you have to like really protect that energy and just, sometimes I want to be around people who just get a certain kind of thing, right? Like the ICRC is such an important and safe space to me. And it has been such a formative place where I built a lot of friendships and relationships. And just like, also like Wendy's office has been really important as well, for building relationships with undergrads, the 0.2% of the 0.02%. I don't know, Wendy, you can correct me later. of undergrads who are Pacific Islanders as well. It's a myriad. It's not, I just, yeah. So I really think this question is important, but also realizing that you belong where you belong, you know, and just being respectful and always like asking yourself, like, what are my intentions going to these spaces is really important, especially in terms of like, you know, who am I located, but, you know, respect and all these other things are really, really important. So I think that's all the real only guideline is, honestly. So thank you for that question.
Okay. Oh,
Oh,
I'm
no.
sorry, Kelly.
I was going to say Greg spoke because he goes to the ICRC. That's one of the first places I met him. I think he spoke really well about our center too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much to our panelists today. And just as I was about to say, thank you. Wonderful. I think that's all of the questions that we have for today. So I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up this session. But please, I hope all of our attendees just join me so much in thanking our panelists. Thank you for your time and for doing the work that you do and for being here with us today. We very much appreciate it. We appreciate learning from you all. And so thank you. We have other sessions that will be happening this week, and we hope that you will be able to join us this week as well as for future weeks for the weeks of welcome. But thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your evening, your morning, wherever you're joining us. Thank you so much.